to the AI show. Today we have a different guest. You might be familiar with her actually, Ruth Yakuba. Hi Ruth, how are you? You are unmuted because I unmuted you. Can you unmute yourself one more time? Oh, no. Hi.
Hi guys.
Good to have you back.
It's good to be back.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us from New York. And today we have a guest from Form Recognizer, and we're going to do the interview, and then we'll answer your questions. For those of you who are new, we are not going to answer your questions for a little bit, and then we will. Promise. So stay tuned. And afterwards, Ruth and I will talk about the Learn modules and the 30-day challenge that we have that possibly give you 50% off on the certification if you finish it on time. And afterwards, we have a also surprise guest who will talk about what she built with her 13-year-olds. It's AI related, of course. So stay tuned. All right.
Yeah, it all sounds exciting.
I know. And we're waiting for your Learn module too that you worked on for anomaly detection, right?
Exactly.
All right. Yeah, we'll hear all about it. I'll take the knot back and see you soon.
Okay, I'll see you guys soon.
Bye. Hi, Vinod. How are you?
Hey, it's going. I'm good, thanks. How are you doing?
Good, not too bad. We had a few technical difficulties, but we're here, and thank you everyone for joining. Are you ready? Well, we have 10 people already. Say hi, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Hey.
So are you ready to roll? Did you want to
Let's
practice?
do it. Let's do it. Let's go.
Awesome. So we don't have our editors, don't have access to producer, sorry. So I have to pick up a few things. So I'll remove you and I'll add you right after the bumper video.
Sounds good.
Okay. You don't want to miss this episode of the AI show where we will talk about form. Oh, were you there? Something happened. Okay, never mind. Doing it again. You don't want to miss this episode of the AI show where we will talk about the Form Recognizer and Form Recognizer Studio with Vinod. Stay tuned. I'm going to do that one more time. You don't want to miss this episode of the AI show where we will talk about Form Recognizer with Vinod. Stay tuned. Hi, Vinod. Welcome to the AI show. Can you introduce yourself to our guest?
Yeah, thank you, Askil. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm Vinod Karpad. I'm a product manager on the Azure Form Recognizer team. So work primarily with all the features across Form Recognizer, and it's great to be here with you talking about Form Recognizer.
Yeah, we are so excited to hear more about what's new with Form Recognizer. Is there any new things that you want to talk about?
Oh, yes, there's a lot to unpack. So we have actually just released a new update that is in public preview starting yesterday. And so there's lots of updates. I can, would it be easier if I just shared my screen and sort of walk you through some of the capabilities that we're talking about?
That would be great. Thank you.
Awesome. Let's do that. So let me know when you can see this.
I'm not yet.
Yes.
Okay, now. Oh, no.
How about that now? Yeah?
This one? Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So like I mentioned, there's a lot going on in Form Recognizer. What I'd like to do is maybe just walk you through some of the updates that we've sort of released, right? So there's lots to unpack. The latest update we had launched yesterday. It's a public preview, and within this public preview, we now have a new model to deal with unstructured documents. So Form Recognizer in the past, we've had a lot of different scenarios where you could use structured forms as well as some semi-structured forms. But now we're working on a new model architecture, a new model type that allows you to work with unstructured documents as well. There's
What do you
Yeah.
mean by structured and unstructured exactly?
Oh yeah. So if you think about documents, let me maybe just zip ahead a little bit, and then we can talk about this in a second, right? So right, think about documents. There's documents come in a variety of different formats. They can be like, for example, PDFs and different types of documents. But within each of these documents, you could have different types of content embedded within it, right? So if you look at this slide from left to right, you'll see that there's structured documents on the far left to fairly unstructured documents on the far right, right? So as you think about all the different scenarios that you have in terms of what data you want to be able to extract from each of these documents, you need to use different techniques in order to deal with some of the challenges as you come across documents that are either highly structured or highly unstructured. So, for example, in things like documents on the far right where it's unstructured, we've got a model architecture now that can actually look at both layout signals as well as language signals to determine what is it that you're most interested in from this document, and what is the different ways that this information can be represented. And it tries to use that information to then determine what values it wants to extract from the document for each of the different fields that you're trying to extract information for.
This is really cool. Thank you.
Yeah, so like I said, right? I mean, there's a lot of information. So maybe what I wanted to start though with was the a quick overview of where we are at today, right? So one thing that I wanted to share was a quick pricing update. You'll notice that the general document API, which is currently in public preview, as well as the invoice API, which is a generally available API, have both dramatically dropped in price. So for customers who were on the fence or considering how they might want to use these APIs, this might be the impetus that they need to start using it, because again, at this price point, it really makes it compelling for a lot of those high volume scenarios.
This is great news.
Right. So in addition to that, right, I've got a few other updates I wanted to share. We talked a little bit about the new model architecture to deal with unstructured documents. There's a new W-2 pre-built model. We're coming up on tax season here in the US. Everybody's probably thinking about getting their paperwork together. So the new W-2 model is something that both tax processors as well as a lot of organizations that deal with sort of income verification or other scenarios like that would find super useful in terms of extracting the right values or extracting the right fields from each of these documents. And I'll be showing you a quick demo of how you could do that for yourself in the Form Recognizer Studio, or actually use it at scale using the REST APIs or the SDK as well. And then there is the update to the invoice model. So the invoice model has an additional set of fields that we're able to extract now. These additional fields are things that customers have been asking for in terms of saying, like, for example, there's some things about VAT and other fields like that. But we also have a new Spanish language invoice model. So the procurement scenario just gets a lot easier for organizations that are dealing with English as well as Spanish documents with the new Spanish invoice model. And then finally, we're continuing to make improvements across the board. The general document model now has support for selection marks, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we sort of go through the overview of what each of these APIs are. And the read API is now available with Form Recognizer as well. We continue to make improvements across all of the different languages, and now we're up to 164 different languages that we can support. So there's a ton to unpack, like I just said. So feel free to stop and ask me questions as I go through this, because I know if you have some questions, our viewers probably have the same questions as well.
You are filled with great gifts to us. 164 languages is
Yes, we're up to 164 languages. We're not stopping. We're going to keep going. It's just a question of making sure that we understand there's customers across the globe who want these capabilities to work across all the different languages that they're dealing with, and so we're on that quest to solve those challenging problems for most customers.
great.
So, I guess any questions as we go through this?
Not yet. I'm sure we will have more.
Okay, perfect. So I wanted to give a quick overview of what Form Recognizer really is, right? Because there's probably going to be a wide variety of people tuning in. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of what Form Recognizer is and sort of how you might want to think about using it. So if you think about Form Recognizer, it's really a set of APIs primarily tasked around the information extraction and sort of task of working with documents. So the easiest way to think about it is if you look at this particular slide that I have on the page, if you read it left to right, you start with the read API. The read API extracts all the text from a document. So if you have a document that contains, for example, an image or a PDF file, you run it through Form Recognizer through the read API. You get all of the text that you extracted out that we can extract out of the document. In addition to just extracting the text, we're also able to do some language detection. So we're able to give you language detection at the line level spans, right? So you can see what are the different languages that are within this document, and you know where those what spans of text are which language as you go through this read API. The next step up from there is layout, and layout extracts not just the output of text or the text, but it also extracts some of the structure. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through a couple of quick demos. The next API you can think about is the general key value pairs API or the document API. And this is a great example of how you could use Form Recognizer to just get started on any document type. So it's a pre-trained model, and I'll show you a little bit more about how you could use that as you extract key value pairs and now selection marks as well. And then you get to the set of pre-built models. And within the pre-built models, you have a few different pre-built models that you can choose from. I'll give you a quick walkthrough of what those are, but there's a bigger list coming up in a second here. And finally, if you really reach a scenario where you have a document type that doesn't quite fit any of these molds, you can go off and go build your own custom model to extract the right fields that or extract the right values that you want out of these documents using the custom model approach. And we're going to take a quick look at how you can build a custom model for yourself as well. Mm-hmm. So if you think about Form Recognizer from a sort of capability perspective, it's about extracting the structure of a document, running that through a inferencing model that then allows you to extract either the specific fields that you want using a pre-built model, or use a custom model to then generate those custom fields or extract those custom fields that you're looking for. And again, it's all a set of APIs. So once you have a model built, or once you have a pre-trained model that you want to use, it's really simple to connect it. For Office users, for folks who are not comfortable with writing any code, there's great ways to do this. You can use all the Office tooling using AI Builder and things like that to integrate Form Recognizer into your Office workflows. For customers that are developers or for Azure users, there's obviously a plethora of Azure services you can connect to. There's Logic apps, there's web apps, there's knowledge mining, there's a whole host of things like Synapse as well for analytics. There's a whole host of different ways that you can connect to this data. And finally, for the low-code, no-code solution, there's also the Power Platform integration in order to achieve this sort of workflow that you might want to create with your documents.
I wanted to clarify before. Yeah. I think our developers needed to go to image for extracting the text from the image to OCR, and then for language detection they would go to the text analytics. Now they're just using Form Recognizer to do all of these things at once, right?
Yeah. So Read API used to be part of computer vision, and it's still part of computer vision. But what we recognize is there's a lot of customers that actually use Form Recognizer that could still benefit from using the Read API as well. And so just making it easier for them to do all the things that they want to do in one spot. So it's, if you've got a lot of documents, you want to run that through Read and just get the output from as text, and that's all the scenario that you're working on requires. There's an easy way to do that using Form Recognizer as well now. But if you wanted to do more and actually work with layout and then work with custom text and work with custom models, you can continue to evolve your application or your scenario to use all the other components that are available with Form Recognizer as well now. Mm-hmm. So what I thought we could do maybe is just do a really quick demo. We'll talk a little bit about all these things in the context of the Form Recognizer Studio, right? And the reason I think this is interesting is because the Studio itself is fairly new as well. The Studio is something that we released probably about 4 months ago, 3-4 months ago, I guess now. But it is the sort of default experience that we're continuing to build on moving forward. So for customers who've used Form Recognizer in the past, you're probably used to seeing the sample labeling tool, which is sort of the older version of the labeling experience. If you haven't used the Studio yet, I'd highly encourage you to go do that. This is where the continued investments in the Form Recognizer UX is going to be. And please go try the Studio. Let us know what you think as well. Right?
I love the Studio.
So within the Studio, you have obviously all of the capabilities we just talked about, right? So I'll really quick just jump through each one of them, walk through them, and share some quick insights into how you might want to use this, right? So the first API we'll start with is read. I can go ahead and use some of the sample documents here to analyze each of the documents here, or I can go ahead and add a new document that I wanted to, right? You do need to do a quick configuration on the studio. You need to actually configure the studio for use by pointing it at the Azure resource that you want to use. So the Azure Form Recognizer resource that you want to use. The other note that I wanted to call out is the studio does require you to be logged into the Azure portal for you to use. So it's sort of uses the same authentication and authorization mechanism as the portal. So you can see I just hit analyze on a document. I now have all the text that was extracted as part of this. So if I had a scenario where I just needed to digitize some documents, this is a great example of how I could use that. I don't need to do anything more, and the Read API solves that problem for me. It also gives me the language information that we were talking about. So you can see that there's obviously the content element here, but it also tells me what are the different languages across the different spans.
So can you zoom in a little bit? It's hard for me to see.
Oh yeah, show Windows Shift plus, right?
Yes.
Is that the? I'm having trouble doing that.
That's right.
Yes, that's right. All right. Right. Maybe I need to figure something else out here. All right, there we go. It's taking a lot longer than I expected, but I guess.
Yeah, it looks good so far. But we'll cut this section. Apparently, we're not able to stream to Learn TV. Yeah, let me see if I can fix that too.
Hold on a second. This is. We good?
No, but I guess I'm not going to be able to solve it. Okay, so let's see. Should we start from this document? So
hold on a second. I think I'm a little messed up right now. Yeah. All right. Go ahead.
So let's pretend that we just opened this page.
Yeah. Is it sharing okay? Are you still seeing the right information you want to see? Or
yeah, I do.
It's completely messed up on my end. So hold on a second here. This is.
Take your time. We can start whenever. I'm taking a look at the questions. Hi, Kevin. Happy Friday, everyone. Sharafuddin, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. We'll answer all of these questions, and thank you for giving us the questions already. Just when we are done.
All right. Okay. Let me know when this is good.
Yeah.
All right. So the next thing we should probably talk about as we go through this, and also if there's any questions, feel free to interrupt and let me know if there's things that we need to stop and take questions on, because it'd probably be easier to do that as people have questions. We might want to just stop and answer those.
Because we are going to cut this section out, we take the questions afterwards because,
okay.
Okay.
Sounds perfect. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the layout API next, right? And so the layout API is where we start actually getting out of extracting just the text to really working on using some pre-built models or unsupervised models to extract more than just the text. So we're working on structure extraction here. And you can see that I can take a simple document, run that through layout, and within the studio, I get all of the elements that we're extracting out of layout. You'll notice that there's a few different layers that I can turn on and off here, right? So I can start with text. If I turn that off, you can see that it tells you all the different elements of the text blocks that we're extracting. It identifies tables as well. So this is a great unsupervised way for you to extract tables. There's no training required. The layout API understands how data is structured and is then able to use that structured information to define what the tables are and what each of those cells are. So here's an example of one where we define two separate tables. This one has a couple of rows in it, and this one has a few more rows in it. So there's two separate tables within this document, and all of that information is just contained within the API response you get. And finally, it's also able to extract selection marks or checkboxes. And you can see that in this case, it's telling you that there's a selection mark, there's the bounding boxes associated with it, and it's telling you whether it's selected or unselected. So the layout API gives you these building blocks to now use to build out a more complex solution, because you started with the read API that just gave you text. Now you've got some selection marks, tables, and structure, and you can use this to sort of do some more interesting things. We're continuing to work on improvements to layout. So you'll see in the future we're going to work on things like being able to decompose the document into a more finer grain, and so there's going to be things like paragraphs and things like that'll also continue to sort of evolve as we go through the next iteration of layout.
This is really impressive.
Yeah, so it's starting to sort of like get into more of the core aspects of what we do within Form Recognizer, right? So the other thing that I'll also share is Form Recognizer is sort of a additive set of APIs. So, for example, when I'm going to share with you the next API, which is General Document, you will get all the things that the General Document API can do, but you'll also get all the things that Layout could do as well. So it's not, you don't really have to say like, oh, I needed some things from General Document, but I also need some things from Layout. I need to call these two APIs separately. You don't need to. They're all as part of the same response. So you get all the outputs from each of these APIs sort of paired together. So let's look at the General Document API. And the General Document API is awesome for a lot of these scenarios where you have just general forms that you need to extract text from, or that you need to extract these values from. And what the General Document API does is it actually extracts each of these key value pairs, and it produces a result that would look something like this. For example, in this particular document, we're able to look at each of these values and say like, oh, for example, this is a key here. The key here is this 2BSEE operator, and the value is this number that is 77337, right? So this is great because now I can take this information, process it through a downstream application. Like there may be an application that processes application forms that are coming in, and I can extract all the information, put it into whatever a SQL database or a like a unstructured database. However, this might be, whether it's Cosmos DB, MongoDB, whatever that downstream application might be, can now take this information as is and just use it and run with it. The key difference.
Color coding, and also anyone who is not a developer can just use this tool and see what can be taken out from these documents too.
Exactly, right. So the studio is a great way for you to play with it. So you can essentially throw in a new document in here and use that to now extract key value pairs and see if your document type will work, right? So most common patterns are customers will come here, try this out, and say like, hey, I've got this one document. Let me see what I can get out of it. They try it out. They say, oh, this looks good. And now they know exactly what the API is going to look like because they have some sample code that tells them how to call the API. They know exactly what the result's going to look like. So they know what they want to extract out of this result. And so it's super easy to now go build your application based on just putting a simple document into the UX, testing it out, validating that it works, and you're off and running now.
This is great.
Yeah, and so the other thing that I wanted to call out is there's absolutely nothing more than just calling REST APIs involved at this point, right? So you're just essentially calling REST APIs, making sure that you can send in a document, get some analysis results. So you're not having to build any models. Just like the layout API, you can extract tables as well. The difference between the selection marks here versus selection marks that we looked at layout is selection marks or checkboxes within General Document API returns both the selection box, which is the box itself and the value, whether it's selected or unselected, but it also returns the key. So in this case, you can see that I have 4 separate checkboxes. If I just had checkbox values, then I'd have to do, using the layout, I'd have to try to figure out, okay, which one of these is selected. But now with the General Document API, I actually know which of these was selected versus which of those was unselected. So it's an easier way for you to process these forms where there's a lot of checkboxes. You now get the keys that are associated with each of those checkboxes as well. And finally, the last bit that I wanted to share in terms of what the General Document API does is it also extracts all the entities that are available within this document, right? So one common sort of scenario that you might want to think about is you might want to say, oh, did I get a contact name, and is that a person or is that an organization? So for example, you might want to say, I want to work with only organizations, and I don't want people to submit information. And you might want to say, did I get an organization or a name as the contact information? The other thing you could do is also do things like validations on emails, right? So you can say like, oh, this is an email. So it's a valid email as long as the entity identifies that it's a valid email. I now know that I've got the right value in each of these fields. So there's a lot to do that you can sort of use both the entities as well as the key value pairs that are extracted to be more effective in your downstream processing of this data. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about the pre-built models. The pre-built models, again, I'll start with Spanish because this is relatively new. It's as of yesterday. So the Spanish language model essentially allows you to use a Spanish language invoice. We are able to extract all of the fields that you typically extract from an invoice. The difference between a pre-built model and the general document model is the pre-built model uses a defined field name or defined taxonomy. So in this case, for example, customer address may not necessarily show up anywhere on here as customer address, but it's able to extract the fact that this is the customer address, and it's extracting it as this particular field. So it helps with some of that downstream processing again, where you know exactly what the field name is going to look like. Whereas in the general document model, the field name is not always going to be consistent because you might have customer one calling it, whatever customer address, the other one might just call it address, and so there might be different ways in which the same information is represented, and so you're going to have to deal with a little bit of that variation and sort of account for that transformation that you might have to do on the end.
That's great.
Right. So those were some of the updates we have in the pre-built models. The new W2 model is something that I wanted to also share. The W2 model again is brand new. It's in preview right now. You can see it's a model that can extract W2s both as a single page W2 as well as a multi W2, right? So because if you notice W2s, you might have noticed that there are some organizations that will send you 5 separate W2s on the same page. So in order for you to extract that or process a document that looks like this, you still need the ability to then identify that it's actually the same form represented 4 separate times. And so the model is able to do all of that to then extract the right values from the form.
This is great news for America.
This is exactly, it makes tax filing so much easier for both tax professionals as well as individuals, right? So that's the key part. And it's not just tax, right? So if you think about, anytime you applied for a loan, like a mortgage or an auto loan or something like that, there's income verification that banks need to do.
Right.
And so there's a lot of those scenarios as well that you really think about. There's a lot of financial scenarios where income verification is a core part, and W2 is probably one of the most common forms that people use as sort of income.
This is great even for personal use to digitalize your forms and then being able to search for it, right? Just taking a picture doesn't do that.
Exactly, right? So digitizing your information and making it searchable, this is exactly what we do, right? So that the knowledge mining pattern, for example, is one easy example of doing that. But from a sort of personal records perspective as well, right? So you have all of your documents, you just run them through Form Recognizer, you get all of this information, and then you can then easily find the right documents that you're looking for.
Yeah, health data and every other thing that you have too, which is awesome. One thing that you didn't show us, there was a tab for code. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, okay, so you mean which one in all right, okay. So this tab. Oh, yeah. So if you think about what we're trying to do here, we're trying to make it really easy for you as a developer to start using Form Recognizer, right? And in this case, what we're doing is we've given you a quick sample code of saying, like, here's how you go ahead and use. This is essentially the code that this is the Python code that this particular API is being used within the studio, right? So you can see that you just put in your Form Recognizer endpoint, your Form Recognizer key, and then we point to this particular sample document that you can get to, or you can replace this reference with a reference to a document that is within a storage account that you have maybe, and just run this code at that point, and you can get all the same outputs that Form Recognizer is generating in the studio, and you're able to then use that as sort of your sample example to get started with, right? So it's a really good quick start in terms of how you use each of these different capabilities without actually having to go figure out, this is a type of document field, and then what do I need to do with the document field? It's the content property within a document field. We do all of that for you, and we just give you a set of quick steps.
I love it.
To get started.
I love it. It's amazing, and you can download or copy it. Makes it very, very easy before you dive into the documentation.
Yeah, exactly, right. So the typical workflow we see a lot of customers doing is saying, okay, I'm going to bring a simple document, add it in here, just click the add button, add a document in, analyze it, validate that it works. Once I have that done, then I can just go copy this code out from here, put a few, fill out a few of these variables of what is my service name, what is my key, point it to a document, and I can actually run this and see that it actually works on my documents as well.
Great.
Right. So that's a lot of what we've talked about so far, which is really around all the things that we're doing to help you to the point where you have a document that it works, and you have a good way to extract the fields that you need, whether it's a pre-built model or it's a pre-trained model like the general document model. Let's talk a little bit now about a document type, for example, where you might find that that there's things in this document that don't quite work with any of these different document types, right? So let's maybe pop back over to the slides a little bit, and then we talked about the slide around structured and unstructured documents. So if you have a document that maybe looks like this, right? So you've got in this case, it's a power of attorney, but there may be other document types that you're dealing with, right? And so how do you extract the right values that you want from each of these different document types? So I'm going to give you a quick demo of what the studio experience looks like for you to go create a custom model to do this. So I'm going to pop back into the studio, and in the studio, I'm going to go select the custom tile, right? And within the custom tile, the first thing you'll notice is you have two options, right? So you can create a template model that we talked about, which is really a model that works well with highly structured documents and documents that have a really defined structure, like a W-9 in this case is a really good example of that. Or you could have a document that deals with things like a rental contract or things like that, right? So in this case, I've gone ahead and created a quick project. To create a project, all you need to do is point the studio to a storage account that contains your PDF files. And the first thing we do is we OCR each of these files. So we run layout on each of these files, and then we give you this labeling experience, right? So I've already gone ahead and labeled most of this document, but I've specifically left out one or two little pieces so we can sort of walk through what that might look like as we do this, right? So the first thing you come in here and you do is you click on each of your documents, ensure that that's run layout, and you can tell that by this little yellow hue around the text. You know that layout's available, and you can start labeling. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new field. So in this case, I've already labeled all of this data, but I purposely left out one particular field. So in this case, I'm really interested in saying when was this actual agreement made. So I'm looking for an agreement date. So I'm just going to create a new field called agreement date here. And it's edited at the very bottom down here. Is this good enough? Are you having trouble seeing this, or is this?
Yeah, my vision is not very good, but you're good.
Okay, perfect. So all I need to do in order to label this field is I just go select the text that I'm interested in. So in this case, it's the Jan 10, 2011 date. I can either select that agreement date from the drop down here, or I can go click on the agreement date here. So either option works. And as soon as I do that, you'll notice that it's added the value of Jan 10th, 2011 to that agreement value. So and the next thing you'll notice is each of these documents has a completely different structure, right? So this particular document looks like this. The next document looks super different, but you'll see that again it has the same information, but it's just represented differently in each of these different places. So all I need to do is go ahead and label each of these documents again, right? So there's things that are the information is again represented slightly differently in each of these documents, but it's contextually it's the same thing. It's just the agreement date. So once I go do this with all the documents, I can now run this, or I can actually train a model to extract all of these fields, right? So the fields that I'm interested in, for example, in this case is, I'm looking for who are the two parties. So who's the landlord and who's the tenant? What's the landlord address? And then I'm looking for other bits of information that I'm really interested in, which is, for example, what is the rent? What is the advance? And then so I'm also trying to do something interesting here with clauses, right? So I'm trying to identify if, for example, there's a clause that stipulates that the renter cannot sublet this property, right? So I'm looking for that to see, like, is there a clause that enables that, right? So in this case, if you look in here, there's a clause that says cannot sublet or lease. So I'm trying to identify things like that as well to see if there's information that I can capture. So at this point, I've taken all of my documents, I've labeled it with all of the different values, and you can see it's there's really not a lot to be done here, right? So you can start with as few as 5 sample documents, right? You don't need anything more than 5 sample documents to get started. So that's the really interesting part about Form Recognizer. We make it super easy for you to get started, right? So 5 documents. If I need to label it, this whole thing I could have done it probably in about a half hour, maybe 40 minutes, with 5 documents, right? So that it's a fair number of fields. So at this point, I go ahead and hit the train. So now I give it a model name, and I'm going to call this the AI show model, because obviously need to make sure we make it contextual. And here's where it gets interesting, right? So you now have the option to choose from one of the 2 model architectures. And the reason this is here is because we use the exact same labeling structure in terms of labeling your documents for either model. So you don't have to make choices beforehand to say, oh, which model do I want to pick? And so do I have to label things differently? No, you just go label your documents, start with just 5 documents. That's as easy as it gets. And then you come in here and you pick the right model architecture that you want to use to train your model. In this case, again, going back to the slides we looked at earlier, I know it's an unstructured document. I know there's lots of variations in these documents. So I know the neural model is the one that I want to pick. So I just pick the neural model and I hit train. And we talked a little bit more about the details of what these 2 model architectures are, how they're different. But it typically takes about 20 to 30 minutes for you to train a neural model, right? So that training process is kicked off and it started. But like any good cooking show, while that is cooking, I already have a pre-cooked sort of sample for us to look at, right? So here's an example of a sample model that I trained earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and click into that, make sure that I'm using that particular model. I'm going to add a new document, and this is a document that I held out of my training set. This is not a document that we looked at, for example, when we were labeling. This is a document that the model hasn't seen before. So I'm going to open that and I click analyze, and you'll see that the process of the API calls across, whether it is a pre-built model or a custom model, is identical. And so it's really easy for you to sort of once you get a hang of the APIs, it's really easy for you to work with them to get better at sort of doing this on the fly. And you can see I've got a agreement date. The agreement date is perfectly picked out based on the value that I provided. I'm looking at the landlord address here. And if you notice the landlord address, you might think like, oh my gosh, it's picked out this whole span of text as the landlord address. But the actual value is exactly what I expected it to be, right? Which is down here is the value. The only reason you're seeing this is within the studio, we don't really draw polygons, we just draw rectangles. And so as this text spans across 2 different lines, it's looking at the min x, min y, max x, max y, whatever those coordinates are, and then drawing out the polygon or the rectangle based on that. And that's sort of the reason that it looks like it's picking a lot more information than it should, but it's actually picking the right information that it needs to. Similarly, it's picking out the right landlord the right tenant. It's picking out the rental address. Again, the rental address has this polygon problem, but it's still the right value, so that we're still good. Rent amount, it's picking the right amount. It's telling you when the rent due date is. It's before the 5th of every month, and so forth, right? So it's doing perfectly exactly what I wanted it to do, right? And it's even able to pick out the sublet clause by telling me that you do not have the permission to sublet or sublease this property. And finally, it's also telling me what, in this case, I annotated or labeled some of the tenant paid services, and it's telling me that the tenant should pay for the electricity bill, which is one of the things that this contract stipulates is a tenant paid service. So it's about 30 minutes or about 40 minutes if you start with a lot more data like I did, to go from starting with a bunch of documents to getting to the point where you have an AI model that can actually extract all of these unstructured fields from these documents using Form Recognizer. So that's sort of the pitch that I wanted to share with you today, because this is a super compelling experience as you think about all of the different organizations. Like organizations today deal with a ton of unstructured documents, and just being able to extract the values from them as not just structured fields, but unstructured documents, that's a really important problem that we think is core to a lot of organizations today.
I love it. I mean, as a person who builds a lot of prototypes to see if things work well, this is amazing because anyone without the technical knowledge can train in different models, can pick up the layout and everything that's important before a developer gets to work on it. I love it.
Yeah, exactly, right. So that is the core value of what we provide. It's like, it's a developer building an AI model that has high accuracy, high precision, high recall, right? So that's the core value proposition for Form Recognizer today.
This is really cool.
Yeah.
And I'm going to train privacy documentations that nobody reads, and maybe we'll be able to read them now.
Yeah, exactly, right. So bring your data set, give it a shot, try it out, see if it works for you. Because if you've got enough documents that you can label, you will definitely find that we're able to extract the right values that you're looking for. So I did wanted to maybe share a really quick example of like one other thing that, as we talked about this, right? So I'm picking up a different document structure here, and this is one where I wanted to train a template model. Right, and a template model has a few additional benefits that you can do today, which the neural model cannot yet, and we're working on sort of closing that gap in terms of making sure that there's feature parity across both model types. But if you think about the capability here, it's about extracting structured fields, right? And so in this case, I've got this table of information that I want to extract as a structured field, right? So I don't really know how many rows of information might be there. There's this document that has a few different rows. There's a different set of rows in the next document, and so forth, right? So this capability within the structured field extraction or the table extraction allows you to now extract all of these rows of information as a set of structured fields. So now you get a repeating row, a set of repeating rows that you can sort of iterate over to say, like, okay, how many rows were contained within this document, and what were each of the values for each of the columns within each row. So just wanted to share this as another sort of a value proposition as you think about, like, we're not just about extracting key value pairs, but we're also working on extracting structured fields or tables. And that gives you now the flexibility to work with documents that have different structures associated with them as well.
Thank you. This is great.
Awesome. And then the one thing that I wanted to maybe just reiterate as we go through this is there are a few sort of things that you need to be aware of, or things that you need to sort of think through as you go through this process, right? So for example, we talked about, you can start with just 5 samples of your document, which is really all you need to get started. You need to configure your storage account for use with the studio, which requires you to set up cores. It's a simple process. It's described in the documentation, but it's just making sure that customers are aware that they need to do that before they can actually use it. And then you go through the labeling experience. We looked at what that labeling experience looks like. When you talk about the labeling experience, just be aware that there are certain fields that are available in the document model or the neural model that are, there's certain fields that are available in the template model or the custom form model that are not available yet in the neural model. So if you do have a data set that you've already labeled for a template model and you use it for a neural model, it'll just tell you that, hey, you've got some things that are labeled that I really don't know how to use.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to ignore them, right? So it'll still train your model, but it'll just ignore the fields that you've labeled as either a structured field or a region or a signature. So those are all things that will just skip over because it just doesn't know how to process those yet, right? It will in a little bit of time. And then the other thing that we need to think about is planning for variability, right? So as you think about this, think about it as you've got maybe 5 different, let's maybe pick a simple example. Let's just say it's a donations form, right? You've got 5 different variations of a donations form because you're working with 5 different organizations, and each of them has a slightly different template. They're still very similar, but slightly different in each case, right? For example, maybe our organization name is in the top right corner versus the bottom left corner in one or the other. So in those cases, with the template model, you'd have to train a model for each of those variations, and then you could compose each of those variations together into a single model. And so when you analyze the document, it performs a classification, identifies which of these models is best suited for this document, and then runs that particular model on that document, produces a result. Whereas with the new neural model, you don't need to do that. So with the new neural model, you just throw in more label data or more samples that describe some of these variations, and the model is able to learn about these variations, generalize across those variations, and extract the right values as it goes through. So that's another key benefit of why you might want to think about the neural model, right? So for customers where you might say, I might have thousands of vendors, I have thousands of different formats that are coming in, I don't have the ability to train a model for each one of those, the neural model is great for that.
Yeah.
Right. And then finally, the one last thing that I'll also mention is the neural model currently is a English only model, right? So if you think about some of the key sort of differences between the two, the neural model being an English only model, it requires you to essentially train only English documents through the neural model. Any other languages, any of the other 164 languages that we support are still available for you to use, but you'd have to use the template model for those.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, we did look at this. The neural model takes about 30 minutes to train. The template model takes only about a minute or two to train. So it'll take you just about a minute to go ahead and train a neural model, a template model. But you have to still deal with some of these challenges around variations and things like that. So it's a question of understanding what your scenario is, defining what your characteristics are of the documents you're dealing with, and then picking the right solution that meets your needs. So making sure that you're aware that there's some language constraints to be aware of, there's some format constraints to be aware of, and there's some training time constraints to be aware of. So as you think through this, that should help you understand like which of those two options will provide the best results depending on the scenario you're working on.
Thank you for these tips. I mean, they're really useful, and this chart too.
Yeah. So again, right, all of this is documented in the documentation. We made a big sort of push to improve our documentation to sort of support some of the feedback that we got based on prior releases, as well as making sure that all the documentation is up to date given what we're releasing now. So if you have any feedback on the product or your experience using either the studio, the documentation, or even the APIs or the SDK, absolutely, please do reach out and let us know. That would be great for us to hear.
Where would be a good place to reach out?
So there is I guess a Form Recognizer contact as email. I can make sure that I share that with you, and we can add that to the slides, or we can add that to the to live stream. But I can definitely share that with you in a minute here.
Great. And lastly, where can people learn more about Form Recognizer and the capabilities?
So Form Recognizer is, I'd start with the documentation. Obviously, the docs are the best place to start. There's a lot of information now. We've updated our quick starts. We updated a bunch of how-tos in terms of like how you get started. If you don't find that there's enough information there, obviously let us know. But there's also a lot of samples that we have in terms of like using the SDKs, using the REST APIs, making sure that you can use some of the other Azure services like Logic Apps or even knowledge mining and Synapse. So there's a number of different samples that we have out there that you could try out as well. I'd say if none of those work, feel free to reach out. I would be happy to help you sort of answer any of your questions and make sure that we can turn your questions into either documentations or samples that others who might have had the same question would probably benefit from as well.
Yeah, and it's very easy to give the feedback on the documentation. There's just a button that you can click and give it right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I'd say that would be the definitely the one of the ways that you could reach us.
And you can try the Form Recognizer Studio, aka.ms/Form Recognizer Studio. I love it. It's super helpful. And thank you so much. Is there anything last thoughts that you want to add?
I would love to hear feedback in terms of absolutely hearing from everybody who's tried it out in terms of what their experience was. We're continuing to work on improvements to the service. So absolutely, AI quality improvements are definitely one thing. Features are another thing. So there's a whole host of sort of momentum around this. The team's been working really hard, and we've shared only a few things that we've got right now, but we continue to work on making things better.
And it looks like you managed to make things much better. Thank you so much to you and everybody who works on it. This is really exciting, and you gave us lots of good news today.
Thank you, Aizkal. It's been a pleasure being with you.
Yeah, it's been nice to have you. Goodbye.
All right, bye.
I'll do the banner thing. Sorry, we have to cut this part. Uh, okay. In today's episode of the AI Show, we talked about the Form Recognizer Studio, the new features that allows you to detect text forms, and what's new with Form. I'll do it again. There was a third thing that I was thinking. In today's episode, we talked with Vinod about the Form Recognizer, the new studio experience, and the new models that allows you to detect text forms. Thank you for joining. Hello. This was great, Vinod. You're really good at explaining things. I appreciate it. I mean, there was lots of good tips that you gave to us.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. That was really fun. Like I said, we've been working on a lot of things, and it's been great to get a platform to share that.
Yeah, I mean, like even in a year, there's just so much improvements. Especially the studio experience is unbelievable to me.
Yeah, and like I didn't want to essentially highlight some of the things that customers have had pain points in the past. Like if you look at the old FOTT experience, that was not necessarily always something that customers were happy about, but we're getting some really positive feedback from the studio.
Yeah. I'm going to try to fix this. We are not streaming to Learn TV, but meanwhile, Ruth, do you have any questions?
No, actually, looking at the demo that Vinod shared is good. You guys are thinking ahead of time because looking at it, I just realized that there's no one size fits all. Sometimes the structure is a form, sometimes it's a document. So having both flavors is also very useful. Than before. I remember when I tried out the form recognizer, everything was pre-trained, and you think, okay, you guys thought of everything. But now, like thinking of enterprises, there are different scenarios. And the fact that you guys are giving this functionality to empower us to customize it depending on our user scenario, I think this is awesome. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's great feedback. Thank you.
Yeah.
So it looks like we have some questions. JSON, Access DB, text files, 100 gigabyte of data. I would like to make in one standard form of data, whether it can be JSON or MS SQL DB. How Form Recognizer can help me? Great question.
Yeah, it is.
Form Recognizer, we typically work as our input modality is text or is not text. It's our input modality is PDF documents or images. So I'd say if you're looking to transform JSON to SQL, I'd say there's obviously JSON transformations available. I'm not sure if I'm reading your question right, but if the question is how do I get JSON or text files, that's really not from text files. I'd say that's really not something that we can do today. Text files to JSON, I'd say probably that would just be some sort of a console app or something like that might help with that. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's the follow-up question. Arabic, I'm sure it's one of the languages that we support.
Yeah, Arabic is definitely one of the languages we support. Translation might be something that you're interested in. I don't know if that's the case, but absolutely, translation might be sort of one of the things that you might want to look at. But like I said, right, as long as your documents are in a PDF or an image, that would be something that Form Recognizer would probably be able to help you with.
We have another interesting question. Can it decode figures like chemical compounds?
Not yet. It can decode text, right? So it can definitely say that that here's the text that we extracted out of these documents. In terms of like recognizing that that's a chemical compound, that might be something that is sort of a post processing step that you can do, right? So you could definitely say like H2SO4 is what we extracted. Converting that to sulfuric acid would be something that probably would be a post processing step that you might be able to do.
Really cool. And we have a complement. Identifying tables is really good. It is really good. I actually had table on a brand that I wouldn't say, but I wasn't able to get the data from it. Not, although it's all digitalized, I can just take a picture.
Yes, and so on tables though, I wanted to maybe add one quick comment there. Tables can be a little confusing with Form Recognizer because, again, like I said, there's tables that you get from layout, which is things that are unsupervised. It's essentially just the model is able to identify if there's a table. And then there's things that I showed you, for example, where it's a supervised sort of field or structured field where there's structured tables, right? And so you can get both outputs. And so you might have like, hey, I'm looking at this and I'm looking at that. So just be aware that you have to look at two different places. The tables property within the response is this is the layout response, and then within the document fields, you get a structured response as well. So there's two different ways that you can parse that out.
Great. We have hi from Turkey. Merhaba. I'm Turkish. And Nigeria. Thank you. Welcome back.
Wow, we've got a global audience today. I love it.
I know, yeah. And 60 people are online here. I don't know, the Learn TV is not working, I think. So this has been a great show. What about handwritten documents?
That's a good question, TMR. It is part of Form Recognizer as well. My bad for not calling that out. Thank you for pointing that out. Yes, you can absolutely recognize handwritten text as well.
I'm going through them. Ruth, do you have anything? Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm not sure whether this was addressed or not for the custom training for forms. I noticed it had support for multiple language. Is there a link that users can click on to see the languages that it supports?
Yeah, absolutely. So within the Form Recognizer documentation, we have a language supported languages sort of document. I believe it's like I can paste it in the chat right now. Hold on a second, but it's.
Since it looks like we have a very international audience here, I'm sure they're eager to start using it in their local languages.
Yeah. And the time difference, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I know it's very late in some places. We have one other question while you're typing that.
Yeah.
What is test model inference?
Sorry. Could you repeat the question again? What is model what is test model inference? Oh, I'm sorry. All I was trying to do was say, you could validate if your model performs the way you expect it to do, right? So, you just train a model. You spend all this time and resources training a model. You just want to make sure, like, if you send it a few documents, will it give you the results you expect to do? And that's all I'm saying. Like, inference is essentially saying you send a request into the model, it sends you a response back, and when you're looking at that to say, I expect. So typically what we do with testing is you have what we call ground truth data, which means it's a labeled data set that you already have that you send a document in, and then you compare the results that Form Recognizer produced as saying, these are the fields that I expected, I found. And then you compare that against what you had already labeled to say, like, okay, I expected, for example, HGO as the host name. Did it actually find HGO as the host name? Like that would be the sort of test that you would run on that to validate if those two things are valid. So that's what testing of the inference really means.
Thank you. Very important question, Kevin. What kind of model versioning and accuracy information can we get with the model? If we see a data drift on a model as time goes on, how easy it is to roll back to previous version?
Oh, that's a great question, Kevin. So model versioning, we don't really have a defined versioning strategy for models. Essentially, what we do is we enable you to train a model, right? So today, there is really no adaptation of a model. So once you train a model, you have a trained model, and you can continue to use that. If you find that your model is drifting, what you would need to do then is add some training data that aligns with sort of some of the challenges that the model was running into your training data set, and you can then train yourself a new model, right? So at this point, there's no sort of lineage between these two different models. They're two separate models. You can choose to say that, okay, I'm going to stop using model one. I'm going to start using model two now, and you can move forward from there. So models currently do not have sort of this adaptation strategy of saying you continually train your model and then you have a new version of your model. So you'd essentially have to maintain these as two separate models and make a choice in terms of saying which one of these do you want to use.
Thank you. Yeah, and anybody else can freely test things out if we can do versioning.
Yeah. And Ruth, I just pasted the link to the language support in our chat. I don't know how to get it over to sort of the external sort of version of this, but it's there if you wanted to use that.
Yeah, I see that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And any other questions? What about NGG AIS company? Have you heard about it? I haven't.
That is a acronym I am not familiar with.
Yeah. Let us know, please. And big hug from Australia. Good morning, Australia.
Hey, good morning. Yes. Oh, good morning. I guess it's still like super early in the morning.
More questions. Is there a way to train models via a pipeline in Azure DevOps or GitHub Actions? Wow, that's a great question too, Kevin.
That is a really good question. So we are actually working on a quick sample that'll show you how to use GitHub Actions as well as Azure DevOps to essentially train a model and then promote models from one environment to another. That is a sample that we're working on. We don't really have a document that shows you how to do that today, but that is something that that is in the works.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay. Hi from Poland. Hello, Poland. That was late at night there.
So we got at least 5 countries already. That's amazing.
Okay. Yeah, Nigeria, Turkey,
double
Poland,
down. Yeah.
Australia. Yeah. Anybody else? Do let us know. Okay, Nigeria. Hello.
Hey.
We have a dedicated audience here.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, not sleeping.
Is that your followers, Ruth? Because we have a lot of people from Nigeria today. Oh, wow.
Those are my people.
Yeah. Are you popular in Nigeria?
No, I'm
well, looks
one
like
of the minority tribes in Nigeria.
This is interesting. Like it's a highly skewed data set that gets me thinking why that might be the case of like Nigeria.
Yeah. We have to India.
Oh, India too. Hey.
Hello. And that's very late in India, right? Right now?
It is definitely late in India.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for joining. A question not related to Form Recognizer, but how to join student level ambassador in Microsoft. Ruth, do you know anything about it?
Actually, that's something we can post on further on. Like after the show, we can post in the comments. We can reach out to the academics team to provide a little more information about that. But that's a very good question.
Yeah, sorry about that. We'll let you know. Ruth, anything else? Did you have any ideas to what to build and what to do next with Form Recognizer?
No, actually, I'm excited to try this out. And it came at a very perfect time because listening to Vinod present, I'm just thinking, having flashbacks back in the days where I'm manually entering my W-2 and the numbers, I'm missing a number or a decimal here. So it makes it a lot easier than when you're dealing with complex document, kind of like what you were talking about, like legal contractual documents. It's not just text. Sometimes people provide information that it's almost like what's it called? Images that have text in it and how to go about doing the classification. So for me, just listening to it, it's almost like double judge. I can't wait to
Awesome.
try it out.
Yeah.
But this is very exciting. It's a good announcement.
Yeah, I
Thank
mean,
you. Yeah.
I had a data entry job while I was in college too, so it wasn't a fun job.
That's true, right? I mean, honestly, like a lot of what we look at is also organizations that want to automate high volume transactions, right? So it's like it's impossible for you to hire enough people to do this if you're doing it at scale. So
Mhm.
that's probably one of the core areas that we see a lot of interest in.
Yeah. Also, sorry. Go ahead, Ruth.
No, go ahead.
The other issue is accuracy. I mean, with humans, there's always lots of chance to make a mistake. And here in US, every time I go to the doctor's office, like how many forms I fill, and doesn't matter. I'm going to answer those questions once again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, speaking of accuracy, one thing is kind of piggybacking on one of the audience's question about when we train these models, how accurate they could potentially be and the data drifts. So, what is your rule of thumb? Like when we're training these data sets, like how long should it be? Like if I have like a record set of 200, is that a little on the anemic side? Should I have like 1,000
Yeah.
records?
Yeah. That's a really good question. Actually, we didn't really touch about that on that. So I'm glad you asked that question because the answer to that question is it depends on which sort of model you want to train. So if you want to train a custom form model or a template model, those models typically do not need a lot more data, right? So those models typically just need about 5, maybe 20 documents at the most if you have enough document. What you'll see is we produce an accuracy score that is the output of the training process. And that accuracy score indicates how accurate does the model think it is at predicting the right value across the different samples that it's looked at, right? We also produce a confidence score that is a result of actually analyzing a document when you actually analyze the document. So we have a document in the documentation section that describes these two concepts and how you want to use them. But essentially, what you want to do is you want to make sure that your accuracy score is high. If your accuracy score is not high with 5 to 10 documents, that means that the model believes that it's actually looking at two different templates, and you probably want to look to see what's happening within your data set. That might need you to split the data set into two different data sets and train an individual model on each of those templates. So that's the first sort of thing that you think about. And then the second sort of area that you want to think about is when you actually analyze a document, you get a confidence score back that tells you how confident the model is at that it's extracted the right value. Now you have to interpret that confidence with a little bit of sort of nuance to it, because that confidence could imply is actually two things, right? So there's a confidence that the OCR process extracted the right text, and then the model extracted the right value within the document, right? And so you have to think about both those two things, and sort of that's the nuanced element of thinking about what the confidence represents. And once you have that confidence, and let's just say you get to about 95%, that's pretty high and pretty good, right? So you can automate this process, and anytime you hit a document that hits like maybe less than 80% confidence, you flag that for manual review, look at that, validate that it's produced the right result. If it hasn't, then you maybe use that data in your training data set, retrain your model, and you move forward, right? So that would be the typical workflow that you use in terms of like understanding what the accuracy as well as what the confidence might represent.
That's for sure. That's a good tip.
Yeah, thank you. We have a few unrelated questions. So, what's next certification should I do? I believe we do have AI developer certification, right? And Ruth?
Yeah, I think that's the next segment that of the show. And yeah, there are actual perks to getting certified, especially in the AI machine learning area. So we can cover that if you can stick around a few more minutes.
Yeah. And should I go with AI or masters in CS? That's a good question. I haven't done any of it, so you guys should answer.
I don't know. It depends on. It's hard to answer that question. That's a subjective question, right? So it's like it depends on what you want to do, I guess, right? If you really want to focus on data science, then AI is probably the way to go. If you want to focus on just core computing concepts, then masters in CS is probably the way to go. So I'd say it's a subjective choice.
Mhm.
It depends.
And the cool thing about having tools like Form Recognizer, all of the applied AI or cognitive services is that you don't have to know, you don't have to understand how to do it, all of the algorithms behind it. You just use it. It's just the REST API code, which is amazing. You know.
Exactly, right. So you just have to be a developer who can use REST APIs, and in a lot of cases now you don't even have to do that. Like with our integration with the AI Builder, for example, Office you could be a office worker where you do not have any programming experience, and you can go train a model using AI Builder, use it in your Power Automate workflows, analyze documents at scale through SharePoint. That ability exists today without actually having to write a single line of code.
Yeah. So it depends on what you are interested. You can start building now. Like AI Builder is the one that Vinod is talking about from our Power Apps, and you don't have to deploy or anything else. You just press publish, I believe, and then it's on your phone. The app is available to you, which is really cool.
Yeah, and one thing I like about a lot of our cognitive services is not just having a pre-built feature that does what you want it to do. A lot of them also provide added metrics that you can see and kind of see, okay, don't just take our word for it that it is accurate. You do see the standard deviation, the error mean over a while to see how gradually, as you're training some of the customizable ones, how your models are improving. Or if it's already there, it just shows you the confidence level of some of the outputs. So yeah, it's not just giving you the answer. We also give you all the AI ML metrics that normal data scientists will need.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, Vinod, for all of the cool features and staying here with us and answering all of these questions. It's really exciting to see the studio, especially, just come alive in the last 4 months. And there's so much goodness in that.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's been my pleasure being on the show. Thank you for having me. And yeah, thank you again.
Bye now.
Great having you.
Hi, thank you for sticking around with us and hanging out with me today. Today is my last show, actually. I'm going to come back as the surprise guest, or host, but yeah, today is my last show.
After going to us now, you should have sent a tweet ahead of time so we can make it more festive.
I know, yeah.
At least have me wear a hat.
But I'm going to start doing another show called Web Wednesday on Wednesdays. And it is at 2 p.m. PST, I think, or maybe 3, I don't know. So stay tuned. And yeah, if you're a developer, come there and I'll still talk about AI because I really like these services, don't you?
That's exciting. Everything web. Are you still going to bring a lot of, I know you're our cognitive service go-to person expert. Are you going to bring some of that into the web content that you'll be putting out there?
Yeah, I mean, majority of the developers in the world are JavaScript developers. And I mean, every app that we have has AI now. So I feel like it's the untapped potential. JavaScript developers are not using these services as much as the other ones. So I hope to change that.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm looking forward to seeing you over there. You said Web Wednesdays, right?
Yes. Yeah, I'll tweet about it heavily too. And today we are going to talk with Ruth about um, 30 days to learn. Ruth, do you want to explain what that is?
Yeah, so this is an exciting new challenge that we have for our audience and everybody to learn AI and machine learning, learn modules that we have on MS Learn. The good thing is you can make it fun. You can learn with your friends. You can make it a challenge. You can learn with your coworkers. But it's basically learning some of these AI solutions that are out there. And also, if you're new to machine learning and you're looking to perfect your skills in machine learning, this is a very good avenue to use these fundamental lessons within the Microsoft Learn to learn the concepts and also have like sometimes when we're learning we probably don't have like a robust environment to run some of these experiments on, so that's another good thing that Microsoft Learn modules also have. And as I was kind of alluding to the other user that was asking about the
Certification.
certification, for people that are participating in this 30-day challenge, there is a reward. You get 50% off the price if you're to go and get certified in Microsoft certification, which it's a big help. I remember when I was outside of Microsoft looking at to get certified in some of these areas. If I had that benefit, that would have been helpful. Um, and yeah, those are for the most part um, the perk and what's out there. You have 30 days to learn these. And also, when it comes to learning, one thing I want to caution people, don't be afraid that, okay, I'm going to be on this learn module. It's going to take a whole week for me to learn something. These are bite sized, but it goes straight to the point. This is something that you can do on your lunch break. And the good thing is, for some of us that have a maybe low attention span, it does. You're, I shouldn't be laughing, but it has awesome real life scenarios that we can all relate to, like business scenarios that you're using to learn these modules. And by the time you're done, you're like, wow, that is cool. I didn't know that's how businesses or other challenges, application challenges out there are going about solving this. So you can take that, then apply to something similar in real life that you're utilizing. So Ashigo, should we step through some of these modules so they
Yeah.
can have an idea of what I'm talking about?
Yeah, we have one good question though. I already done it. I'm assuming you mean this 30-day challenge that you've done it. What's next? What's more to explore at Microsoft platform? This is actually the 30-day challenge is giving you just an overview of the things, but there's more for sure. For like, I think a good way to learn is to have an idea and start building it, because that way you learn so much faster. And yeah, start building your applications. Um,
And to add to, I agree with Ashigo. And another thing to add is us on the inside, we do know we constantly push out new learn modules. The fact that Vinod came and introduced the fact that we're extending things like Form Recognizer to now add, let's say, training, customizable training. You may be wondering, okay, how can I do that? So chances are, okay, maybe you find a learn module with maybe a real life situation. So we're constantly improving our services, and we're constantly thinking of real life scenarios where we can create a lot of these learn modules to keep you stimulated and up to date with what's going on with AI and machine learning space, and also how to apply this to understanding how the Azure platform works. A lot of people that have taken this, we've seen a lot of increase in making themselves more marketable when it comes to career. So once you have these knowledge, I forgot what the percentage is based upon surveys. People are better positioned to make career moves after they get certified and land more paying jobs after this. So the perks is not necessary getting a discount on getting certification, but it's actually building on yourself. You're investing in yourself, growing your knowledge, and also being rewarded in your career. So it's a win-win any angle you want to approach approach on it.
Yeah.
So I go enough talking. Should we go through that?
Yes. So we have around like 10 minutes before our surprise guest, Nitya, is going to join us. One last thing. When is Ignite happening? I'm not sure about the Ignite, but Build is coming up in May. I'm not sure about the date also. Stay tuned for that.
Yeah.
All right, let's go.
Yeah.
So
and before you start, when you get to the machine learning part, I'd like to show a visual layout on how it looks like in real life. So
okay.
have time.
Yeah, please share your screen. I'll get started. I think after the first one, it's machine learning. So look at me, completed at 57%.
Oh, look at you.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Well, I should have counted these earlier. Sorry about that. So basically, once you start doing this, the challenge, you have 30 days. The time is ticking, and the end date is April 30th. So if you finish it on that time frame,
it's March 30th, right?
April 30th. I think it says April.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, no. Maybe you're right, but
no, you're right.
The clock is ticking, so make sure you finish all of them, and then you can have like 50% off from the certification. And I think certification is a couple $100, which is not very cheap. So it's a good way to add to your resume. So the first one is actually going through all of the applied AI and cognitive services that we have. Not really applied AI, actually, cognitive services mostly. So it's just like Form Recognizer, but actually these are the tools that Form Recognizer is also using under the hood. For example, there was on Form Recognizer, you can read text from an image. That's computer vision. And you could also detect the language. It's not natural language. Well, there's natural language processing because that's how they understand what is the key, what is the value on some of the things. So you go through it and you learn what you can do, see some examples, and at the end of it, you are tested for your knowledge. So this is a good one, especially if you don't know. Where am I going? All right. So after that, we have a couple machine learning ones. Ruth, if you want to.
Yeah, actually, I'll have you navigate because it looks like we have 5 minutes before Nitya comes on board. She has a lot of amazing stuff to share. Well,
Sorry, a correction. Jay says it says April 30th last year. That must be a mistake. Well, I'll correct this, but it should be, it can be in March, actually, as you mentioned.
yeah, I think it's March 30th, but we'll update it at the description of the video to be sure that Ashigo and I are not leading you astray. We want you to learn and also get your prizes.
Yes.
So, do you want me to cover the
Oh, did
AI
you want to?
machine learning?
Oh, I thought you were going to share your screen, so I'll.
Okay, I can share. I can share.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Okay, if you want. Yeah. So we have 4 of the machine learning. It's a good chance to get started. And then we have deep dives into the cognitive services like vision, object detection from vision, face detection, and so on and so forth. So this is really good introduction, actually. If you finish all of these things, like, there's lots of things that you could build.
Yeah.
Bruce, are you sharing?
Yeah, so my sharing is, of course, acting up. So we can skip that part. But basically, what I wanted to show is we do have different entities of learning. So we can go the no code, low code route by using the automated machine learning. All of that is under the Azure Machine Learning workspace. And basically, the good thing about this is you have data, you have an idea. Now it's about putting it into real action. So let's say for automated machine learning, you're a business, you run bike rentals. Of course, in the spring versus winter, they may be different. You may get different customers. So that's a real life example. So how can you predict any given day how many rentals you're going to have? So that's like a regression example. So in cases like that, the good thing about automated machine learning is you don't have to memorize all the machine learning algorithms out there or the models out there. It has all of that for you. You can choose whether you want, let's say you're doing regression, choose all the algorithms in there. If you want to select specific ones, you can do that. So it'll run everything, and at the end, it spits out the best model that came up with the best, accuracy. And the good thing is it's also running this in parallel, so you don't have to wait for a long time like on traditional experiments. Once you have that, you're able to deploy your model to whatever target environment you want. So if you want to containerize it and deploy to a Kubernetes cluster, you can do that. Also, okay, you're done with the model. You need to hand it over to a developer. You can provide the web API and the key, and they just plug in their code and they're rock and rolling with that. So that's automated machine learning. What I wanted to show you guys on the screen, actually, Ashigo is actually showing you guys. It shows a suite. As you're bringing in data, the good thing about Azure Machine Learning is it has it stores all your data sets in one place. all your experiments in one place, all the versioning and whatnot. If you're exporting your models, it has a place for that. If you need to provision your compute, it's all there. If you're exporting to import, is there. So those are very good for you to start learning end to end machine learning pipelines. The next thing is designer. We have
I'll go
three.
back.
What's that?
I'll go back to that.
Yeah. So the next thing is Microsoft also offers a notebook. Um, I'm just mentioning this. I'm not going to go into detail, but that's for everybody that has their common, depending on what framework that you have, whether it's PyTorch or TensorFlow. You bring your frameworks and build everything within the notebook. You can go that route. So it has all of that. The next thing is called Azure Machine Learning Designer. So the examples Ashigo is showing is a use case. Let's say you're using classification. So let's say you have in a hospital type of situation, there are a whole bunch of people. You want to predict whether somebody is diabetic or not, maybe looking at their age, their weight, and maybe their blood pressure, different features. You can easily predict that. But the good thing about this is everything is drag and drop. So you can drag your data set into a canvas. It teaches you how to split your data. If you need to split, okay, what is going to be my training data set? I want 70% into training and 30% into evaluating. If I need to score it, if you need to do any data normalization, don't worry about all of that. It's explained in the learning. That's a good thing about it. It's not just showing you, explaining to you every step. And even though Ashiko is showing those boxes in there, you actually click on it and look at the settings and also the data as you progress, how the data is changing. At the end, it is going to produce a model, and similar to automated learning, you can deploy it to whatever format or whatever destination you want. So these are very exciting learn modules. I'll say even for season, whether you're a season or beginner person wanting to learn machine learning, you can learn with the regression, classification, and clustering type of scenario. There are different learn modules for that. And by the time you're done, you're ready to rock and roll, and will be teach Ashigo and I new tricks.
Yeah, I actually haven't done, as you can see, the machine learning ones. I have to do it too. So we talked about the designer and automated machine learning, and create classification with designer, and create a clustering model. So we are running out of time. I want to bring in Nitya, but can you tell a little bit about what is the difference? Oh, we lost her. And okay, Nitya, are you ready? You are coming in. Hello.
What? Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing good. I hope you can still see me because I've got a bunch of things set up here, but I'm super excited. And I was listening to you and Ruth talk, and I realized you're doing this module. So I made my background the sketch note, and I actually posted it on Twitter because it turned out that it's very relevant to what you were saying and to what I want to talk about, which is computer vision. So this was kind of my visual guide for the whole of the AI fundamentals learning path. And I posted the link to it. So if someone wants to make it their desktop background the way I have it as mine, feel free. But I'm actually here to talk about this. So let me know when you want me to say something.
Yeah. Bruce, welcome back. So, is there anything last thing that you want to add?
I'm just excited to see Nitya's drawing. No, they're very intuitive. No, I learn better visually. So Nitya just speaks to me with all the awesome sketches she does because that's how my brain learns. So I'm looking forward for this segment.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you so much.
here's Twitter of Nitya that you can follow. And one last thing, I just want to say, because Jay had a really good tip, use your personal email address when you're doing these things, so you won't lose it over time, like if you change your jobs. So thank you, Jay. All right, Nitya, tell us all about what you did.
Okay, so this is really me in a very strange role, which is as a parent, right? So I want to talk a little bit about something my 13-year-old and I have been working on, and I kind of thought it would be exciting in the context of what you're doing, yeah? So I'm calling it, by the way, it's called parent programming because it's pairing a parent with a child. And I really wanted to highlight the AI in it, but I thought, okay, that's too much.
No, I liked it actually.
So the goal, and it's called AI from Scratch because we have this journey. So let me tell you a little bit about it, and then I'm going to switch over and show you some of the stuff we've been working on. But I'll try to actually play videos of the demos because they don't necessarily work out. So the origin story for this was that I wanted to work with my 13-year-old who kind of is a Python person, and I'm JavaScript. So it's already we're at war. But he's like, oh, okay, I need to do something structured. And I'm like, oh, I'm a visual storyteller. Let's do a hands-on project. Why don't you come? Like, we'll discuss this and draw stuff and figure out how things work. And he's like, no, just give me something I can make. I want to work hands-on. I don't want to do all that stuff. Just tell me stuff and let me break things, right? So I thought, okay, let's have a project together where we both get to have our say, right? So he does the tinkering and I will be his documenter, right? I will kind of write down. So I started putting together this site called AI from Scratch. And the goal is we're looking at a curriculum that will start from hardware. There's microbit related stuff you can play with. Scratch, there's a lot of really good curriculum out there that you can play with as a parent. And then there are like ML models. Once you've actually built them, how can you use them in different apps, right? So the origin story, believe it or not, was at Build last year when Lemur Fried actually did this really nice, I don't know if you saw it, a demo with Lobe.ai, which is Microsoft's kind of like no-code free tool for like, creating computer vision models. So she did this thing where she hooked it up to a Raspberry Pi and showed how you could like recognize objects and print receipts that kind of you could use in a store. And my son's like, oh, I can do this. I said, what problem will you solve? And he said, the problem is that I apparently hassle him a lot to ask him what coffee pods. He's like, I'll be like, can you make me a cup of coffee? And he'll be like, okay, fine. I'll be like, what pod is this? Because he unpacks the pods. He was like, great, I'll build a model that will tell you what it is. So you leave me alone. So we started using Lobe.ai to basically classify Nespresso pods. There's a good thing and a bad thing in here. Let me just say that he did the work, right? He kind of figured it out, built the model. Turned out it wasn't the best model because you can already tell what the pods are by their color. But hey, good for him. He worked through it. So he was like, great, now I have this model. And then we were figuring out how can we get it into apps? And we stopped there because he was like, I solved your problem. Leave me alone. But then when I started the site, I was like, let's have a sustain. How do I build on it? Like you showed me you could learn and pick stuff up. So to build on it, I had kind of this path that we're trying to work through, which is first we'll learn how to work with microbit and hardware. Then we have Microsoft Make Code that'll actually let you program and download stuff to the microbit. Then let's look at Scratch because that's where the community is. Like, we should go where the developers are. And then kind of when you think about building models itself, you want to look at both Lobe.ai, which is from Microsoft, and Google's Teachable Machines. And the bigger picture behind underneath is this thing called AI Blocks. So I'll try and tell you about it. So my recent adventure is really like over the past week, we've been playing around with Lobe.ai, Teachable Machines, and Scratch. And I actually made him this little booklet. There's a lot of stuff behind this. We won't go there, but this is where we are now. We identified a problem. We captured sample images, and then we did two separate paths. On top, there is a path with Lobe.ai. So we're able to train with Lobe.ai, export the model to TensorFlow. Lobe comes, the new versions come with a React starter app and an Android starter app. So we're able to like kind of do this and show that it would kind of work, the model work. But we couldn't work with Scratch. So with Scratch, they have a teachable machine-based AI block. So we kind of work with teachable machines, built the same thing. Now he knows how to do it. So we had two different workflows. but we could get 3 different app targets, right? We had Android, React, and a Scratch app. And the next goal down the line is where we want to be. Like, this is not where we are yet, but this is where I want to go, where it turns out that both Teachable Machines and Lobe use the same kind of TensorFlow model. It's just they package them differently. So one way to kind of reduce the number of workflows is, can I somehow take my Lobe AI model and kind of manipulate the packaging so I can dump it into a site and make it look like the Teachable Machines expected version, and then it should work. So we're playing with that. But the long-term strategy is actually, it turns out that Teachable Machines runs on this thing called AI blocks from MIT Scratch. It's a kind of like an experimental extension framework, boilerplate. So what if we could actually build our own custom Lobe.ai blocks, right? So down the road, we want to go from this one workflow to 3 targets and custom blocks. So that's where I want to go. But I'll quickly talk about, this is the path that we did. So the past week, and the reason I'm putting these kind of things is I want to encourage parents and kids to think about how they can work together. So it's like, I go there and say, look, I have knowledge of computers, but my child doesn't know how to code. Like, how can I pair up with them to learn AI? That's what I'm thinking the parents will say. And I'm thinking that kids will be like, what are you talking about? I'm in middle school. I know how to work with computers, right? Just tell me what I need to learn so I can build stuff, right? So how do we couple this? And we're kind of, I won't say much about it because we did something at a hackathon that will hopefully be interesting later on. But if you had an AI kit for kids, how could you get them excited to build stuff? And then, and this is important to me, tell their own story. So we had lots of things we did. So my 13-year-old, I made him build a custom font. I made him work through this exercise and then kind of provided him guidance on how to get there. So this is what we did. We started with a real use case. You want to know how bad this is? This is the bowl. Like, while I was waiting for you, candy. Okay, so this is not good for me. But the use case was, he was like, okay, you keep talking about computer vision, right? I have this bowl of Halloween candy left over. Can the computer see it? Like, does it know that's candy? And I'm like, yes, that's computer vision. You need to teach it with examples. Just like the way I used to teach you with picture books, you need to show it pictures, tell it what it is, and then it'll learn. So off he went. So we got Lobe.ai. And some of the interesting things that came here, like, how do I teach my computer about types of candy? Great. You have to get pictures. How do I get pictures? Because you can't keep uploading one at a time. So we actually use things around the house. That's a lazy Susan, if you can see it. And it has a document light on top. So if you set it spinning and turn the light on and then take pictures, you'll get pictures with all kinds of views and different kinds of lighting. So it gives you a really diverse thing. We later on found out that we should have put different backgrounds underneath, lesson learned. But anyway, the thing is, he kind of figured it out. He did it all himself. He uploaded a lot of pictures. He went crazy with the pictures, but that's okay. And then Lobe has this thing where you can export the model out. So now the good thing is he can take that, and this is him using the built-in React app starter to test out the model. And you can see that already we started a discussion which said, hey, you can kind of label individual candies and it recognizes them, but what if you had a whole group? How are you going to deal with that? And then we came up with this strategy that, okay, when it's multiple, rather than try to have it recognize all of them, we'll have a new classification called multiple. And that's also helpful because we can come up with a use case, as you will see. And so we were able to kind of interactively figure out how to use this, right? Like, think through a problem. And then it's like, all right, now we need to use it in an app, right? And this is where I'm saying, like, thinking through this help. So this is where we have to rely on Teachable Machines, because MIT Scratch has this AI blocks where you can load TensorFlow models, and they actually, you can load, other people have done custom blocks as well. But for now, Teachable Models is basically Google's thing that lets you load a TensorFlow model and has a bunch of very simple blocks that get you started with doing predictions and then using the prediction to run a program, right? So it's actually pretty good. If we have time, I'll show you how that works. But now we were answering the question, great, I got the computer to recognize candy. What can I do with it? And so the fun idea here was he has that little robot over there, and the robot loves candy. And every time it eats candy, it starts getting bigger, right? And then there are certain candies it doesn't like maybe, and he's trying all kinds of things. But here is what we learned, right? You can see that the interface is very simple. Have you worked with Scratch before?
I have, yeah.
I haven't.
Okay, so long story short is blocks on the left side are of different types, but at the bottom, that blue thing that you see, those are extension blocks. So you can add new kinds of blocks. But typically, all the blocks there are like, event driven, and they've got kind of looks conditionals, whatever you want. So very simply, you're kind of having an event-driven approach here, right? The TensorFlow model lets you load a model from the web. If you look at it closely, there's a URL. So effectively, you're deploying your TensorFlow model to a web server and pointing this thing at it. The very first time you run the program, it'll load the model, and bingo, suddenly all the other blocks will be customized with the classes that are in your model. So now you can start using those directly. There's a video helper, which is very good because we want to actually not allow kids to have the video on all the time and walk away while it's still recording them. And then you can use those predictions. So here he built a very simple app, right? So you can see this work, and you can tell that the model is not the greatest. Why? Because it thinks I'm chocolate. Like the minute I come on screen, it classifies me as Lynn, right? And I'm like, this is not, so we've got to work on this model. But again, and you can see that thing just increases and like decreases, right? But it proved two things. He figured this out. He built the model. He put it on Teachable Machine site, loaded it up, was able to write stuff that kind of looked at the different classifications and did something fun, right? Yeah. And then the most important thing for me is we started conversations. Look, why does your model think I'm a piece of candy? How do you fix this? He has to fix it. I could do it, but he has to fix it. Second, I want to add more candy types. Like, do you really want to have one block like this for each piece of candy? Can you not make your code more efficient? And then third is extensions, right? We're using an extension. How can I create one that's lobe.ai specific? Why are we reusing something else? And so the last but not least, I think just to kind of close the loop on it, one of the things I wanted to do was give him the sense of like, hey, I can go tell my own story. Like not only and I think this is important, anytime you learn something, you should learn it and then you should write about it and share it and encourage other people to try it, because that's how we kind of really do learn. So what I did is I made him create a custom font. So the handwriting that you see on all these slides, even the one on the title, is actually his handwriting in a font, right? So we're now able to like do this, and I visualize everything. So end of the day, I don't know if you can see this, but this is his story. This is kind of like a zine that talks about how he built his first computer vision, and we're done, right? So do we have time to see what the MIT thing looks like?
Yeah, I just pasted the link on the chat too. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I'll see if I can show you real quickly. Now, this is not necessarily going to work, but I wanted to talk about why I thought this was important, right? So MIT has this AI blocks. If you go to raise.mit.edu, that's their Uber site. It is super cool because they not only have a bunch of programs you can use, but they literally have curriculum, including using MakeCode and Microbit, and a bunch of different hardware elements, right? But the way we did this is I tried to make my own version of his code. So let's see if it'll work. It may or may not. Because his code is stored on his account and he doesn't give me the password. So I have to look at it and just make it up myself. But the first thing you'll see is that it's loading up his model. And if I were, let's see. So this little character here, I made up my own code here. But if I start this up, it's thinking about it. And let's see. See, it looks at me and thinks I'm Lint. I'm like so upset. But anyway, let's see if it recognizes. See there, it recognizes Mars. Can you kind of see it?
Yeah, and your finger was in front of the label, but it's still recognized. That's really good.
Yeah, so we tried different kinds of things, but it thinks I'm Lint. I don't know why, but so we got to fix this. But my point is that it was super interesting to try. But I also want to talk about the fact that if you go to the bottom, you'll see that the Teachable Machine blocks are actually super simple. There is a block that says use this model, and I'll show you what that looks like when you start. So when you start, right? This is the model, and it shows this little orange thing to say I don't have a model, and everything here says class 1, class 2. But if I were to go and actually put the model in, right, and then kind of say, let's say I bring it over and say, when this is done, now you see it turn green, the check mark. Mm-hmm. Now it's loaded up the model, and suddenly you'll see that these model things are showing the classes, right? So yeah, so now kids have a very seamless way of like, hey, I just write my model, put it there, run it one time, activate it, and then go to town, right? So this was a very simple way to do it. I also wanted to kind of show that when you look for other extensions, they have a ton of them. It's not just the ones on the site. So here is a Microbit one that I hope to try next. And then they have like things that work with Makey, if you've ever used Makey. I've played with all of these in the past. But what I like is, let's do this one. I think this is the one. I set this up before. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. This is basically their blocks for, let me see. This was, I think, face detection or face sensing. So if I'm lucky, it'll work. So I have it set up so when I turn video on, it'll switch the costume to neutral. So when I click this, right? So it's set to neutral. It should be all right. When I press the space button, it's gone. But it thinks I'm happy. Okay, hi, I'm happy. Okay, so it goes to neutral. It's very slow. That's what I've realized is that it takes a while. So when sometimes I'll do something and 3 seconds later it's like, I'm happy. And I'm like, okay. But anyway, the thing I was bringing this up for, and let me turn the video off. The thing I was bringing this up for is because when you look at this has nothing to do with teachable machines. There is this one done by someone else. This one is done by the microbit robot block. So you can actually have a robot do stuff. This one is done by teachable machines. So obviously, we should be able to build a block that talks to a cognitive services hosted model or a load.ai hosted model and provide these kind of blocks. And this is where I want to go next. And if that's of interest, the thing that's behind this is called PRG AI blocks, and it's an open source GitHub repo. It's an experimental one. So I'm kind of hoping to go look at that. And that's all I had, actually.
This is amazing. A lot of questions. Well, anybody who wants to learn more about it, you can follow Nitya to start with and see all of the other good work that she's doing. But ask away your questions. We have 9 minutes. Nitya, this is amazing. I mean, how did your son become a Python developer, may I ask?
Oh, so long story short, I should admit that on Python, I'm a terrible person because his influence is his dad. So we basically started working with code when he was very young, but I used to do stuff with Lego Mindstorms, right? Mm-hmm. So we know Lego Mindstorms, it's another block-based language. But there are actually operating systems you can find that will basically reflash it and allow you to code it in Python. So dad and him started saying, why do we need all this? We're going to code the stuff in Python. And so he started learning basic Python. And there was actually a time when we were looking at using Python notebooks and kind of like systematically going through how to learn Python. But he actually likes this kind of project-driven stuff more than learn a language. Like if you give him the book that says, first learn conditionals, then loops, and do stuff, he didn't work. So there was a specific book written by a guy, and it's my name, I mean, it's blanking on me now, but it's actually games in Python, which he really loved. So he stole my previous MacBook. So he has a MacBook Air and I have a MacBook Pro. So he has that set up and he's been kind of playing around with Python, trying to build small games, work through them systematically. And one of the things that I like about what we were doing with this is that if you look at both MakeCode, and I believe most of the kind of block-based languages, there are places where you can switch over, you can learn with blocks and switch over to see what the Python or JavaScript equivalent code is. So I'm hoping it works both ways. Plus, yeah, like the stuff with the Raspberry Pi, the Limor-Fried version of like, hey, take your TensorFlow model, run it on a Pi. You can actually code to that completely in Python. So he was happy because there's a route forward, but that's how he started. It was all from working with Lego Mindstorms.
Yeah, that is awesome. We have a heart in Australia. Sorry.
Go ahead. I think this is amazing. And I like the graphical route that it goes in terms of like your son. Because a lot of people think, okay, you have data and just go train your model, and you have exemplified the struggles that are into like finding data and labeling. The fact that you're still labeling, I know this is candy. It's like, no, we already know Nitya is sweet. So
this is so bad for me. No, I actually was I was kind of interested in this experiment because it turned out it doesn't have problem following instructions and like hacking these things, but the strongest thing we have to do is teach them how to think. Like, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Yeah. Like, what is the label, first of all, right? I think we never think of that. Like, what is the label that you're trying to classify here? Yeah. It's easy to classify things by their names, but to think about an activity and figure out what that means as a label, I think those are kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious, in terms of the framework, is there flexibility? Is it all PyTorch, or can they use like different frameworks in
You mean
building these models and exporting into the different formats?
you mean in Scratch?
Yeah, in Scratch or even in Lobe.
Oh, so Lobe, I don't know. So actually, I'll take that back. Lobe, let me see if I can actually start it up. It allows you to export as TensorFlow, TensorFlow JS, TensorFlow Lite, and Onyx.
Awesome.
But I don't remember seeing PyTorch. If it starts up, I can show you. But oh wait, there might actually be a picture of it in here. Let me see. So it
Oh,
does
okay.
let you export it out. But here, let me see if I can zoom this out. You can see the
Actually,
options that are available. Do you see this?
yeah, you
So
answered
Power
my
Platform, yeah, go ahead.
No, I say you answer my question because it gives you different frameworks just in case you're not always limited to, like, let's say TensorFlow, which is amazing,
Yes.
but just in case you want to use different frameworks, it gives you the capability.
Yes, it's threatening to quit on me. We'll see. We'll see if it quits. But yes, and I think the way I see it, let's see. The way I see it is they might add more. The new interface, the new version of Lobe that I saw now has categories like, okay, what kinds of apps do you want to do this? What kinds of platforms do you want to export the model to? So I absolutely think it's possible.
We have a question, and it's late in India, I think. Think Python is the best book or not for beginners? Do you guys know?
Which one?
Think Python, I think.
Depends on what age they are. I've not used Think Python, but Python the hard way is one of my favorites. And I kind of, is it for kids or do you know what age they're thinking about?
No, Aditya, you can ask and then come back to. We'll answer. And there's a packed book for machine learning on the links that you can download for free. Check it out.
So one more thing, I'm curious, what was the most exciting thing out of this machine learning part that your son came out learning and he's like excited about?
Okay, so don't quote me on this because he's tired of mom putting stuff on Twitter. Okay, but the thing that we were excited about is Microbit has a robot. So have you heard of DIY robot cars?
No.
There are actually meetups around the world, and what it is they have, like, you can join a meetup and you can go to there'll literally be a circuit on the ground. You build a car, you teach it to use computer vision and have self-driving algorithms, and then you race each other's cars, toy cars, on that circuit, right? We got a robot version, the Microbit robot, which basically has enough sensors that it can do simple things like detect obstacles in front, etc. So the thing he was excited about, I think, was, if you've ever been to Mindstorms competitions, you know that that's one of the big things that they try to do collision detection and, like, how do you work together as a team, etc. And he was able to connect that to what we're thinking about. It's like, oh, okay, now I know how it works behind the scenes. Then we were just like, okay, use, light sensors and pressure sensors and things like that. But now computer vision is one step higher. I understand what it's doing. And I think that that's what, even the example I was trying to get him to tell me, when you think about computer vision based on the terminology I used, what's an example? His first example was when dad backs the car out and I can see, the rear view mirror, and it tells me when we're going to hit something, right? Yeah, that's a great example, right? So I think that what excited him was, how do I apply to things I know? And then kind of seeing it as like the extension of, oh, I already did this stuff with Mindstorms and now I can do something more. But I'm sure he'll deny all of it.
Thank you for sharing your story. This is really cool. And to wrap it up, we have 2 minutes. Do follow Nitya and Ruth for more of these resources. And Nitya have these amazing visual guides for cognitive services and other Azure related stuff, right? And check out the Scratch if you have kids. Try it out. There's lots of tutorials on their website that you can do. And I did use it to teach to 6 to 12-year-olds. It's amazing how fast they can learn. Yeah. And this is my last show for AI show. I'll be at Wednesday And you guys have been a great audience, and it felt like a community, really. Thank you for joining, and thank you for all of the questions. And thank you, ladies, for joining today.
And you've been an amazing host too. The few times I've co-hosted with you, it just makes it a breeze. So it's bittersweet, but looking forward for Web Wednesdays.
Thank you. But Seth will be here next week, and after that too. So stay tuned. I'm not sure what he's going to do. At least he's going to do rock paper scissors. So he's going to work on some vision stuff too. And Nitya, thank you so much for joining in the very last minute.
Yes. Thank you for having me. Super excited.
Right. Bye, everyone.